The sun was already high over the quiet countryside when the old farmhouse came to life. The sound of roosters echoed across the open fields, and the smell of fresh hay floated through the air. Inside the small wooden house, a young girl moved quietly from one corner to another, feeding the chickens and pouring milk into a bowl for the cat that always waited near the back door. Her name was Lily. She was 16, soft-spoken, and lived with her grandparents on a little farm that sat just beyond the dusty road leading out of town. Lily had grown up here, surrounded by green fields, animals, and the slow rhythm of nature. Her life wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. She loved watching the sunrise each morning, loved the way the wind moved through the tall grass and how her grandmother hummed old songs while cooking breakfast. To her, the farm wasn't just home, it was her whole world. Her grandfather had once been strong and broad-shouldered, but the years of work had made him slower now. Still, he never complained. He always said that hard work was the only way to build a good life. Her grandmother, gentle but firm, made sure Lily never forgot to study after chores. They didn't have much money, but they had pride, love, and peace. And for Lily, that was enough. Every morning after helping with the animals, Lily walked 3 miles to the nearest school. The road was long, lined with dust, trees, and the occasional passing tractor. She didn't mind it. She liked the quiet. It gave her time to think, to dream, and sometimes to sing softly to herself. But once she reached school, that peace often faded. The other students came from town. They wore new clothes, carried shiny phones, and talked about parties and things Lily had never experienced. She didn't envy them, but her quiet ways made her stand out. Some thought she was strange because she didn't talk much. Others teased her because she lived on a farm. And while most ignored her, a few had made it their daily fun to pick on her. They laughed at her old shoes, her simple lunch packed in a small box, and the smell of hay that sometimes lingered on her clothes. She didn't fight back or yell. She just lowered her head, said nothing, and kept walking. Deep down, it hurt her, but she never showed it. Her grandmother always told her, "Kindness is stronger than anger." And Lily tried hard to live by those words. One afternoon, as she sat under a tree near the playground, reading an old book her grandfather had found in a box, a group of students walked by. One of them, a tall boy who liked showing off, snickered. "Look at her. Still reading those boring books while the rest of us actually live." His friends laughed. Lily didn't even look up. She turned a page and pretended not to hear. The laughter faded as they walked away, but a knot of sadness formed in her chest. When the bell rang, she quietly joined her next class. She sat near the back, took careful notes, and avoided eye contact. The teacher liked her because she was always polite and did her work well, but even that made some students dislike her more. It was easier for them to see her as the quiet farm girl who didn't belong than as someone trying her best. When school ended, Lily walked home alone. The road stretched endlessly, but the moment she saw her family's small barn in the distance, her heart lifted again. Her grandfather was fixing the fence while her grandmother waited near the porch with a smile. "You're home, my dear," she said softly. "Dinner's almost ready." Lily smiled and nodded. She never told them about the teasing. They already had enough worries, and she didn't want to make them sad. That evening, while washing the dishes, her grandfather asked gently, "Everything okay at school?" She looked up and smiled, pretending not to understand what he really meant. "Yes, Grandpa. Just the usual lessons." He nodded slowly. He wasn't convinced, but he didn't push her. He had seen the look in her eyes, the kind of quiet pain a child tries to hide. After dinner, Lily sat outside on the steps, looking at the stars. The night sky out here was full of them, so many it felt endless. She loved moments like this, the cool breeze, the chirping of crickets, the smell of earth after sunset. She often wondered if people in the city ever saw stars this bright. She doubted it. Maybe they were too busy looking down at their phones to look up at the sky. Her thoughts drifted to someone she hadn't seen in years, her uncle. He was her mother's younger brother, but he hadn't visited since Lily was little. Her grandparents mentioned him sometimes, but always in short sentences, as if the past was something best left untouched. All Lily remembered was that he used to be in the army, traveled far away, and lived a life full of danger before deciding to disappear from that world. She had no idea where he was now, only that her grandfather still wrote him letters sometimes. "He's somewhere peaceful," her grandfather once said. "Men like him need quiet after everything they've seen." The next morning, the sun rose bright and strong. Lily woke early as always. The rooster crowed before dawn, and the sound of the cows mooing filled the yard. She slipped on her boots and went outside, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. She liked mornings like this, fresh, silent, filled with promise. As she worked, she felt calm again. The animals didn't judge her. They didn't laugh or whisper. They just trusted her. After finishing the chores, she washed up, packed her lunch, and started her walk to school. Along the way, she picked a few wildflowers from the roadside. She liked keeping them in her notebook as bookmarks, small pieces of beauty she could carry with her. When she reached the school gate, a familiar voice called out behind her.
"Hey, farm girl."
"You bring us some milk today?" It was the same tall boy and his friends. They laughed loudly, not caring who heard them. Lily kept walking, her steps steady, her eyes fixed ahead. "What, too good to talk to us now?" another one said. She said nothing. Her silence annoyed them more than any words could. One of them grabbed her bag and pretended to look through it. "What's in here, hay?" He laughed and tossed it back. She picked it up quietly, brushed off the dirt, and kept walking. Her heart pounded, but she didn't cry, not here, not in front of them. Later that day, she sat in class, staring out the window. The sky outside had turned gray, heavy with clouds. Rain started to fall, soft at first, then harder. She thought about how nice it would be to stand under the rain after getting home, to let it wash away all the dust, all the words, all the hurt. When the bell rang, she waited until most students left, then packed her things and stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but puddles glistened across the ground. The air smelled clean again. She smiled a little. Maybe tomorrow would be better. Maybe the world would be kind again, just for a day. When she reached home, her grandmother was hanging laundry on the porch. "Oh, sweetheart, you're soaked," she said. "Come change before you catch a cold." Lily nodded and went inside. She changed into dry clothes and helped her grandmother prepare dinner. As they cooked, her grandfather listened to the radio, nodding to the rhythm of an old country song. For a while, the world felt warm again. That night, as the family ate together, the phone rang. It was unusual for them to get calls so late. Her grandfather answered, listened for a while, and then smiled faintly. "Well, I'll be," he said. "You finally decided to come visit?" He looked over at Lily, his eyes softer than usual. "Guess who's coming home soon?" Lily's eyes widened. "Uncle," he nodded. "Said he's been away too long. Wants to see the farm again." For a moment, Lily's heart filled with excitement. She barely remembered him. But something about the idea made her feel safe. Maybe it was because her grandfather spoke of him with quiet respect. Maybe because, deep down, she sensed there was something powerful about him. Not in a loud or showy way, but in a way that made people feel protected. She didn't know it yet, but his visit would change everything. The bullies at school, the pain she tried to hide, the quiet tears she never let anyone see. All of it was leading to a moment that would test her strength and reveal who her uncle really was. But for now, as the rain started again outside and thunder rolled across the hills, Lily sat by the window watching the drops race down the glass. She felt something strange, hope. She didn't know why, but she could feel that something was about to shift. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what was coming. The next morning came with a cool breeze that swept across the open fields. The sun had not fully risen yet, and the air carried that soft golden color that only appeared right before daylight. Lily was already awake, brushing down the horses and gathering eggs from the chicken coop. She moved quickly, her mind still thinking about what her grandfather had said the night before. Her uncle was coming home. She didn't know what to expect. The last time she saw him, she had been too young to remember much, just the image of a tall man in uniform who had lifted her in the air and promised to bring her candy the next time he came. That time never came, and as the years passed, he became more like a story than a person. Now, after so long, he was finally returning. Her grandfather was in a good mood that morning. He whistled as he worked near the barn, checking the tractor. "He said he'll be here in a few days," he told her, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Said he's been working overseas for years. Wants peace and quiet now." "Well, he's come to the right place," Lily smiled. "Do you think he'll stay for long?" Her grandfather shrugged. "Hard to say. Men like him don't sit still for too long. But if he's coming home, maybe he's finally ready to." She didn't ask more. Something about the way her grandfather said it made her feel that her uncle had seen and done things most people couldn't imagine. After breakfast, she started her usual walk to school. The road stretched out empty ahead, with fields swaying gently on both sides. She enjoyed the sound of her boots crunching on the dirt, the songs of the birds overhead, and the smell of wet grass after the night's dew. It was peaceful, but as the school came into view, her stomach tightened. She hoped that maybe, just maybe, today would be different, but things rarely were. The moment she walked through the school gates, she could feel the stares again. Some students whispered to each other, pointing at her shoes that had patches on the sides. She ignored them. She had learned that silence was her only shield. When she reached her locker, she noticed something. Someone had drawn on it with a marker, a crude sketch of a cow and the words "Farm Girl" written under it. For a second, she just stared at it. Then she took a tissue from her bag and tried to wipe it off, but the ink had already dried. She didn't cry. She just sighed quietly and walked to class. The morning lessons passed slowly. The teacher spoke about math, but Lily's mind wandered. She thought about her uncle again, about what kind of person he might be now. Maybe he would be quiet like her, or maybe he would have strong stories about faraway places. She smiled a little thinking about it, and that small smile gave her some warmth inside. During lunch, she sat under the big oak tree near the edge of the schoolyard, the only place where she could eat in peace. She opened her lunchbox and took out 2 sandwiches, an apple, and a small cookie her grandmother had made. She was halfway through when she heard footsteps. It was the same group again, the tall boy and his 2 friends. They always seemed to find her no matter where she sat. "Well, look who we've got here," the tall boy said, pretending to look surprised. "Our favorite little farmer." Lily didn't look up. She kept her eyes on her sandwich. "Hey, we're talking to you," one of the others said, stepping closer. "You too proud to say hello now?" Lily quietly put her lunchbox back in her bag and stood up to leave. But the tall boy moved in front of her. "What's the hurry?" "We just wanted to know, do you milk cows before school or after?" The other boys laughed. Lily's voice came out soft but steady. "Please let me go." For a second, the tall boy looked surprised that she spoke. Then he smiled mockingly. "Sure thing, farm girl," he said, stepping aside. As she walked away, he called out, "Don't forget to wash the mud off your shoes. This is a school, not a barn." Their laughter followed her all the way down the hall. She spent the rest of the day in silence. Her teachers noticed how quiet she seemed, but they were too busy to ask. When the final bell rang, she left quickly, not waiting for anyone. The walk home felt longer that day. She kept her head down, watching her steps on the dirt road. By the time she reached the farm, her shoes were dusty and her heart heavy. Her grandmother was outside watering the plants. "You're late today," she said softly. "Everything okay?" Lily nodded. "Just a long day, Grandma." Her grandmother didn't press her. She only smiled and said, "Go wash up, dear. Dinner's almost ready." Inside, her grandfather was on the phone again. His face brightened when he saw Lily. "Guess what?" he said, covering the receiver. "He's arriving tomorrow night. Your uncle's flight lands in the evening. We'll pick him up at the station." Lily's eyes lit up. "Tomorrow?" He nodded. "Tomorrow. So maybe give the house a little extra cleaning, eh? Don't want your uncle thinking we've let the place fall apart." Lily laughed softly. "Okay, Grandpa." That night she could barely sleep. She kept wondering what her uncle would be like. Would he recognize her after all these years? Would he remember that small promise he once made? The thought made her heart flutter with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Morning came and she got up before dawn. The farm looked beautiful in the soft light, the grass wet with dew, the trees glowing faintly gold. She cleaned the living room, dusted the shelves, and helped her grandmother prepare her uncle's favorite meal, though none of them really knew what that was anymore. At school, things didn't go much better. The bullies were back at it again. This time they took a picture of her walking with her old backpack and shared it around, calling it "Farm Girl on a Field Trip." A few students laughed when they saw it, and one even showed her the screen. She turned away, her face burning. She didn't understand why they hated her so much. She didn't bother anyone. She just wanted to study, finish school, and help her grandparents. But no matter what she did, they seemed to find something new to mock. That afternoon, it got worse. She was walking home when she heard bicycle tires behind her. She turned around and saw the same 3 boys riding slowly, following her. "Hey, farm girl," one shouted. "You walking home again? No tractor today?" Lily didn't answer. She just kept walking. They rode closer. One of them threw a small clump of dirt that hit her shoulder. "Oops," he said, laughing. "Didn't mean to. Thought you liked dirt." Her heart raced, but she didn't turn around. She kept her steps steady until she reached the edge of her farm road. There she finally looked back and said, "Please stop following me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were firm. Something about her calmness caught them off guard. They exchanged awkward looks before riding off, laughing to cover their unease. When she got home, her grandfather noticed the dirt on her sleeve. "Fell again?" he asked with a half smile. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Grandpa." He didn't ask more, but the look in his eyes told her he didn't believe her. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange, they drove to the nearby station to pick up her uncle. The air smelled of rain and diesel, and the faint sound of a train horn echoed in the distance. Lily stood beside her grandfather, her hands clasped nervously. When the train finally stopped, people began stepping out, some carrying bags, others waving at waiting families. Then she saw him. A tall man in his late 30s wearing a plain jacket and jeans. His walk was steady, his eyes calm but sharp. The moment he saw her grandfather, a rare smile spread across his face. Her grandfather walked forward and hugged him tightly. "Welcome home, brother," he said. The man looked down at Lily, who was half hiding behind her grandmother. "You've grown," he said softly. His voice was calm, deep, but kind. "Last time I saw you, you were barely tall enough to reach my knee." Lily smiled shyly. "Welcome home, Uncle," he nodded. "It's good to be home." On the drive back, they talked quietly. He asked about the farm, the animals, and how school was going. Lily didn't tell him the truth, she just said school was fine. But something about his tone made her think he saw right through it. When they reached home, the farmhouse lights glowed warmly. Dinner was ready and laughter filled the air again. For the first time in months, Lily felt truly happy. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, her uncle stepped outside. The moonlight shone on the field, silver and still. He stood there for a while, listening to the night sounds. Then he spoke quietly to himself. "Almost like a promise, I'll take care of them," he said. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, unaware that her uncle's return was not just a family visit. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. The next few days after her uncle's arrival felt brighter than usual. The farmhouse seemed livelier. There was laughter at the dinner table again, and even her grandfather, who rarely smiled, often did when his younger brother told stories about his travels. Lily listened quietly during those moments, her eyes filled with wonder. Her uncle had a calm voice, the kind that carried both strength and peace. He didn't talk much about his work, only saying that he had spent years moving from place to place, training people and helping others in dangerous areas. He spoke more about the kindness of strangers, the beauty of small villages, and how the world was not as cold as it sometimes seemed. Her grandmother often said, "You've seen so much, yet you still talk about goodness. That's rare." Her uncle would smile and answer, "Because good people are everywhere. They just don't make the news." Lily liked listening to him. There was something different about the way he saw things. He noticed the little details others ignored. The sound of the wind, the way the cows responded to gentle words, the look in a person's eyes when they were hurting but pretending not to. He didn't say much about it, but he saw everything. One morning, while Lily was getting ready for school, her uncle stood by the porch drinking coffee. "You walk all the way to school every day?" he asked. She nodded. "It's not far. Just 3 miles. He looked at the dirt road stretching toward the horizon. "That's still a long walk for a young girl." "I like it," she said with a small smile. "It's quiet. I can think." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but I'll pick you up after school today. I want to see the town." She agreed, though she didn't think much of it. To her, it was just a simple offer. At school, things were the same as always. She kept to herself, focused on her lessons, and tried to stay invisible, but it never lasted long. During lunch, while sitting under her usual tree, she noticed a few students pointing their phones at her again. They whispered and laughed, though she couldn't hear the words. She felt that familiar sting in her chest, the one she'd learned to ignore, but today, for some reason, it hurt a little more. Later, in the hallway, one of the boys, the tall one who led the others, walked past her and muttered, Careful not to bring your farm smell into the classroom. Country girl. His friends snickered. Lily didn't reply. She just kept walking. But she didn't know that her uncle's truck was already parked down the road outside the school, waiting to pick her up. When she walked out through the gate, she froze for a second. Her uncle was leaning against his truck, arms crossed, watching her with a faint smile.
"Hey," he said.
"Need a ride?" She nodded, trying not to show how happy she was to see him there. As they drove home, he asked casually, "Everything going fine at school?" She hesitated, then said softly, "It's okay." He glanced at her. "Okay or almost okay?" She looked out the window. "Some people just don't like me. It's fine." He didn't say anything right away. The silence between them was gentle but heavy. Finally, he spoke. "You remind me of someone I knew long ago," he said quietly. She used to say the same thing, "It's fine," even when it wasn't. Lily looked at him. "What happened to her?" He smiled faintly. "She learned that silence can protect you for a while. But sometimes silence also lets others believe they can hurt you again." Lily didn't reply, but his words stayed in her mind long after they reached home. That evening, her uncle helped her grandfather fix the old fence near the barn. As they worked, he asked about the school again. Her grandfather sighed and said, "Kids can be cruel these days. We try to teach her to ignore it, but she's been keeping too much inside." "I can see it," her uncle nodded slowly. "I've seen that look before. Quiet on the outside, but a storm inside." The next day, Lily's school held a small event, a cleanup drive near the woods that bordered her family's farm. Students were supposed to gather in groups and help clear trash. It was meant to be fun, but for Lily, it was just another opportunity to be left out. She worked quietly by herself, collecting cans and plastic from the grass while others joked and took pictures. Then, as the sun began to lower, she realized her group had wandered far ahead, leaving her alone at the edge of the woods. She hurried to catch up, but before she could, she heard voices behind her. It was them again. The tall boy and his two friends had lagged behind on purpose. "Hey, look who's here," one of them said, smirking. "Still cleaning up everyone's mess like always, huh?" She stepped back nervously. "I'm just doing the work," she said softly. "Sure you are," the tall one said. "Maybe you should stay here. You fit better with the dirt," the others laughed. One picked up a loose piece of rope that had been used to tie trash bags. "We should make her the mascot of the cleanup crew," he joked, swinging the rope playfully. "Stop it," Lily said quietly, but her voice shook. "Oh, relax," the tall boy said. "We're just joking." He tossed the rope toward her and it brushed her arm. They laughed again. The sound felt crueler than the act itself. Her throat tightened. She turned away, ready to leave, but one of them grabbed her sleeve and said, "Hey, don't walk away when we're talking to you." In that brief second, fear flashed in her eyes. She pulled free and ran toward the open road. The boys called after her, laughing, but none of them followed. To them, it was just a joke. But to Lily, it wasn't funny. By the time she reached home, tears had already streaked her cheeks. She wiped them quickly before stepping inside. Her grandmother saw her and asked what happened, but Lily just shook her head and said she was tired. She went straight to her room and shut the door. Outside, her uncle was sitting on the porch. He had seen her run up the road from a distance and knew something was wrong. He waited a while, then gently knocked on her door. "Can I come in?" There was silence for a moment, then a faint, "Yes." He stepped inside and saw her sitting on the bed, her face turned toward the window. "Want to talk about it?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." He sat down across from her. "Everything matters when it hurts you," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then finally spoke. "They keep doing it. They call me names. They laugh. They think I'm stupid because I live on a farm." His eyes softened. "Did they touch you or hurt you today?" She hesitated. "No, they just scared me," he nodded slowly. "Fear can be louder than pain sometimes." He was quiet for a few seconds, then added, "You did the right thing by walking away. But I want you to know something, Lily. There's strength in being kind, but kindness doesn't mean letting people walk over you. You can stand tall without being cruel." She listened, her eyes wet. "I don't know how." He smiled gently. "You will. And you won't have to do it alone." The next day, he decided to visit her school, not as someone looking for trouble, but as a quiet observer. He spoke to the principal, explaining that he wanted to see where his niece studied and make sure everything was fine. The principal, unaware of the situation, welcomed him kindly. During lunch, he sat in his truck across the street from the school, watching as students poured out into the yard. From a distance, he saw Lily sitting under her tree again, alone. Then he noticed the same group of boys nearby, whispering and pointing at her. He didn't move. He just watched. When they started walking toward her, he stepped out of the truck and crossed the street. The boys froze when they saw him, tall, calm, his presence quietly commanding. He didn't yell or threaten. He simply walked up and said, "Afternoon, boys. You mind telling me what's so funny?" They exchanged nervous glances. "Nothing, sir," one mumbled. "Good," he said, "because I like laughter. But only when it's not at someone else's expense." They said nothing. He turned to Lily, who looked stunned. "Ready to go home?" he asked kindly. She nodded. As they walked away, the boys stood silent. None of them laughed this time. That evening, Lily sat on the porch while her uncle fixed the lantern. The air was cool, filled with the scent of rain. She looked at him and said quietly, "Thank you." He smiled. "For what?" "For showing up." He looked toward the horizon. "You'll find that showing up is sometimes all it takes to change things." She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel small anymore. And deep inside, her uncle knew that this was just the beginning, because he had seen that kind of cruelty before, and he wasn't about to let it happen again. The sky was turning gray when Lily left the school that afternoon. The wind was soft, brushing through the trees, carrying the smell of dust and cut grass. She walked quietly, holding her books close to her chest. The other students rushed past her on their bikes, laughing and shouting as they went home. Lily didn't mind. She liked walking alone. It gave her time to think, and it was the only time she could truly breathe without worrying about what others thought of her. But that day, something felt different. As she turned down the narrow dirt road that led to her family's farm, she noticed a faint sound behind her, the low hum of bike tires on gravel. She didn't turn around at first. She thought maybe it was just someone heading the same way, but the sound didn't fade. It grew louder, closer, then came the laughter. Her heart sank. She didn't even have to look back to know who it was. 3 boys and 2 girls from her class. They'd been bothering her for weeks. Little things at first, like mocking her clothes or pretending to cough when she walked by. But lately it had turned into something meaner. They seemed to enjoy seeing her hurt. They didn't understand her silence. They took it as weakness. "Hey, farm girl," one of the boys shouted from behind. "Going home to milk the cows again?" Lily kept walking, eyes fixed on the road ahead. She didn't reply. She had learned long ago that talking back only made things worse. "Don't ignore us," another boy called out, his voice full of laughter. "We're just asking." She walked faster, clutching her books tighter. The bikes rolled closer, the sound of their wheels crunching over the dirt. She could hear them whispering to each other, then laughing again. They passed her and stopped in front of her path, blocking the road. She froze. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" one of them asked, grinning. "Afraid the chickens might miss you?" The others giggled. Lily's hands shook, but she didn't say a word. She just wanted to get home. "Come on, we're just joking," said the tallest boy. "Don't look so scared." He reached out and flicked the brim of her old straw hat. It fell to the ground. Lily bent to pick it up, but one of the girls snatched it before she could. "Let's see what the fashion queen wears these days," the girl mocked, holding the hat high like a prize. "Wow, it even smells like the barn." They all laughed again. Lily stood still, her face red, eyes wet. She didn't want to cry in front of them, but the tears were already forming. "Give it back," she whispered softly. The girl smirked. "What was that?" Lily's voice trembled. "Please, just give it back." "Oh, did you hear that?" one of the boys said. She said, "Please." He grabbed her backpack from her shoulder and threw it into the mud by the roadside. The sound of her books hitting the ground echoed through the quiet path. Mud splashed onto her skirt. "Stop it," Lily said, her voice shaking. The tall boy stepped closer. "Or what, you'll tell your cows?" The others laughed louder. But before she could reply, a sudden rumble of thunder rolled through the sky. It wasn't close, but it was enough to make them all look up. One of the girls said, "Let's go." "It's gonna rain." They started to turn away, but the tall boy stopped them. "Wait, let's take a little souvenir first." He pulled a small rope from his bike basket, the kind used to tie things down. "Let's see if our little farm girl can handle a bit of her own medicine." The others hesitated, unsure. Even they thought it was going too far. But before anyone could stop him, he grabbed Lily's wrists and wrapped the rope loosely around them. "There, now you look like you belong on your farm." Lily's heart raced. She tried to pull back, but he tied a quick knot. Not tight, but enough to scare her. They all laughed again, though one of the girls looked uncomfortable. "Okay, that's enough," she said nervously. "You're gonna get in trouble." "Relax," he said. "It's just a joke." He snapped a photo with his phone and the flash lit up Lily's terrified face. Then he dropped the rope and tossed her hat into the mud. "See you around, farm girl," he said as they all got back on their bikes and rode off, still laughing. When the sound of their laughter faded, only the wind remained. Lily stood there for a moment, shaking. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely untie the rope. The rain started falling softly, soaking her hair and clothes. She bent down, picked up her hat and wiped the mud off as best she could. Her backpack was ruined, her books covered in dirt. She sat on the roadside and cried quietly, the rain hiding her tears. A few minutes passed. Then she heard the faint rumble of an engine, an old pickup truck coming down the same road. She quickly wiped her face and stood up. The truck slowed down beside her. The window rolled down. "Lily?" A deep, calm voice called out. She turned and froze. The man in the driver's seat had sharp, kind eyes and a calm presence. It was her uncle, the one her grandfather had called just a few days earlier. She hadn't seen him in almost 3 years. He stepped out of the truck, walked toward her and stopped when he saw the rope marks on her wrists and the mud on her face. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "What happened?" he asked softly. She tried to speak, but no words came out. He took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "It's okay," he said gently. "Take a deep breath." She shook her head, wiping her tears. "It's nothing. I just fell." He looked at her for a moment, then glanced down at the muddy books and the rope lying on the ground. He didn't ask again. He already knew it wasn't nothing. He picked up her backpack, brushed the mud off, and handed it to her. "Let's get you home." The drive back was quiet. Lily stared out the window, trying to hide her face. Her uncle didn't push her to talk. He just drove slowly, his eyes occasionally flicking toward her reflection in the mirror. When they reached the farm, her grandparents came out to greet them, surprised to see him arrive early. But their smiles faded when they saw Lily's state. Her grandmother gasped, rushing over. "What happened, dear? Are you hurt?" "I slipped," Lily said quickly. "The road was wet." Her grandfather's eyes met his brother's. He didn't believe her either, but he didn't say anything. Her uncle simply nodded and said, "She'll be fine. Let her clean up and rest." Later that night, Lily sat quietly in her room, brushing her damp hair. The sound of crickets filled the silence outside. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The laughter, the rope, the humiliation. She had never felt so small. Downstairs, her uncle sat with her grandfather. The room was dim, the only light coming from the small lamp on the table. He spoke in a low, calm voice. "She didn't tell me much," he said, "but I saw enough." Her grandfather sighed. "It's those kids from school, isn't it?" He nodded. "I'll handle it. Just don't do anything rash," the old man said. "She's had enough trouble already." Her uncle smiled faintly. "Don't worry. I don't fight children, but I can teach them something they won't forget." The next morning, Lily woke up early as usual. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled fresh. She walked outside to feed the animals, trying to act normal. Her uncle was already up, sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied softly. He looked at her for a moment and then said, "You're a strong girl, you know that?" She shook her head. "I don't feel strong." "Strength isn't about fighting back," he said quietly. "It's about standing up again after someone tries to break you. You did that." Lily didn't answer, but his words stayed with her. For the first time in days, she felt a small spark of hope, that maybe things could change. Later that day, her uncle went into town. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, but he stopped by the school, asked to meet the principal, and requested a meeting with a few parents. His calm tone hid a quiet power that made people listen. He wasn't there for revenge. He was there for justice, and the kind that teaches, not punishes. Back at the farm, Lily helped her grandmother hang the laundry in the sun. She looked toward the road, wondering what her uncle was doing. She didn't know the details, but something inside her told her that whatever he planned would be fair. And maybe, Just maybe it would finally make the bullies see her differently. That night, the sunset painted the sky with soft orange light. Lily sat on the fence watching the fields glow in the fading sun. Her uncle walked over, his face calm as ever. "Everything's going to be fine now," he said quietly. She looked up at him. "Did you tell them?" He smiled faintly. "Let's just say they'll be visiting the farm soon." "Why?" she asked, confused. "Because sometimes," he said, "the best way to change someone's heart is to let them see the world through yours." Lily didn't fully understand what he meant yet. But she would, very soon, and this time the lesson wouldn't come from fear or anger. It would come from kindness, the kind that turns even bullies into better people. The next morning, the school felt heavier than usual. The students whispered in the hallways, and a strange silence hung in the air. The rumor had spread fast, something about the principal calling in a few parents for a serious meeting. Lily didn't know much. She had walked into school quietly as she always did, keeping her head down. She had no idea that her uncle had already been there earlier that morning. He had walked into the principal's office, calm and polite, but with a presence that made people listen. The principal, a kind woman who'd worked at the school for years, greeted him with curiosity. "You must be Lily's uncle," she said. "I've heard a lot about her. She's a good student." He smiled. "Yes, she is. She works hard, doesn't talk much, but she's got a lot of heart. Unfortunately, not everyone sees that." The principal nodded slowly. "I've been hearing about some incidents. We try to stop bullying when we see it, but sometimes the kids hide it well." "I understand," he said softly. "I'm not here to blame anyone. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Not to Lily, not to anyone." He pulled out his phone and played a short video clip. The room went silent. It was the video the bullies had taken, the one they thought no adult would ever see. The laughter, the mockery, the rope, all caught in clear sound and picture. The principal's face turned pale. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "This is unacceptable." "I'm not asking for punishment," her uncle said calmly. "I'm asking for understanding. I'd like to meet those kids and their parents today. If you can call them in, I'll handle the rest." The principal hesitated. "You're sure?" He nodded. "Yes, I have a plan, one that'll do more good than any suspension ever could." An hour later, the parents arrived, confused, embarrassed, and worried. Their children sat beside them, their faces pale, eyes fixed on the floor. The laughter they had once shared now felt like a distant memory. When the video was played again, no one spoke. The parents looked at their kids in disbelief. One mother covered her face, shaking her head. A father's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes, not at Lily, but at his own son. Lily's uncle didn't raise his voice. He waited until the room was silent before he spoke. "Children can be cruel sometimes," he said quietly, "but cruelty isn't born and it's learned, and it can be unlearned too." He walked slowly to the window and looked out at the schoolyard, his voice calm and steady. "That girl you mocked, she wakes up before sunrise every day. She helps her grandparents run a small farm. She takes care of animals, cooks, studies, and never complains. She doesn't know how to hurt anyone. She just works hard and stays kind. And yet you thought she was weak." The kids looked up, shame filling their eyes. "You thought her silence meant fear," he continued, "but it meant strength. You thought her simple clothes made her poor, but they were worn by choice by a girl who knows the value of every drop of sweat her family works for." No one dared to move. Even the parents stayed quiet. Then, instead of scolding them, he smiled slightly. "I don't want you to be punished. I want you to understand. So here's what I propose, a week at our farm. No phones, no cameras, no jokes. Just work, real work. If you're brave enough to mock it, you should be brave enough to try it." The room was silent for a long time. The kids looked at each other, then at their parents. Some parents agreed right away, others hesitated. But in the end, all of them nodded. They knew it was fair. That evening, when Lily came home from school, her uncle was waiting for her on the porch. She walked up slowly, holding her books close. "You went to my school," she said quietly. "I did," he admitted, her eyes widened. "You didn't tell them, did you?" He smiled gently. "I told them enough. But don't worry, I didn't yell, and I didn't fight. I just invited them to the farm." Her brows furrowed. "You did what?" He chuckled softly. "You'll see tomorrow."